and thank you for joining us. So I guess while you're already 500 people above who have joined the session, so we can give it a start, and while your colleagues can join in, I hope you can hear my voice. If you can hear me, there's a hand icon on the right side. Please, if you can click on the icon, if you can hear me. And then if you cannot hear me, because I see someone has said there is no any sound, I think this is before we started off. But yes, we have started off now, so tell me your voice is clear, perfect sound. Thank you so much for your feedback. That's really useful. So we know that you can hear us and everything is sorted. Thanks again. And before we begin, this is session 4 again. This is elementary teacher. We have another session that's tomorrow that's going to be our final session. So thank you again for joining us. Those of you who are joined us now, welcome. And those of you who have joined us this morning as well, thank you so much. So I'll go move on to the moderators for today. It's me, as usual. You have Minerva, Nikos, Medni, and Nasir. We are here in the background to help you with any Q&As that you have, any help that you need, and any support. So if you have any questions for us, please let us know, and we will help out with the best we can, because there's so many of you. So we'll try and help out all of you with any Q&As that you have with trouble with audio or the handout or anything as such. And we have Denai, who is with us again. Thank you, Denai, for joining us, and thank you for your valuable time.
Thank you.
Thanks. She needs no introduction by now, honestly, but yeah, for those of you who are probably joining us for the first session, this is your first session. Then Denai is a teacher educator. She's a content developer. She is also an author. She's also co-authored the Saudi editions. And obviously, she's successfully delivered several training workshops for supervisors and teachers in Saudi Arabia. We're delightful to have her here cover all these training sessions with us. Denai usually refers to a handout in her training sessions. So I'm going to drop the link to the handout in the chat box. You are able to download this link, by the way. There are 2 handouts in this link, handout 1 and 2. If you click on the link, you can see both the handouts, and you can download these as well. These are for you to take away. There was a question that came in that, do we need to give you back these handouts? No, you don't need to give us back. This is just a takeaway for you from the session, so you can keep these handouts with you. And then I'll cover housekeeping really quickly. Once you're in the WebEx, you'll have to join to the audio, and you have to connect to the audio. So you can do that now. If you cannot hear the sound, please connect to the audio and you will be able to hear us. And me or one of my colleagues can drop the link about how you can connect to the audio during the webinar. And the other thing that's important here is please do not, your bandwidth is important. So we recommend closing down any high networking app, such as gaming platform, Netflix, YouTube, because this is going to affect your bandwidth all the way. So just make sure you're not using those. You will receive the you will receive the webinar participation certificate. So you will be able to download this certificate, but however, this is going to be done after the whole series is completed. So you can download after November 19th, which is when we complete Super Goal and Mega Goal as well, so intermediate and secondary. The other thing that's important is we'll cover Q&A in the end, so we'll go along the session, but once time is up, we will pause and you can leave if you need to. It's all right, you don't need to stay on, but then we will stay on for you if you have any questions or anything that has to be addressed. We're just going to answer your questions at that point. You can see on the right side, there's the Q&A box and the chat box. So you can use both of these boxes to interact with us. Please use the Q&A box that's located on the right side of your screen, and we encourage you to ask any questions during the session, and we will cover this in the Q&A. You can also chat in the chat box or engage with the presenter. You can also, then I usually reads out a lot of comments that come in the chat box, so feel free to drop it out in the chat box. And then lastly, for me, is you are being marked present automatically, so you don't need to mark your attendance anywhere. You're automatically attended by the system. You're marked present. When you log in, you must have noticed you will only see yourself, so you can only see your name. You are not in a hidden list, or you're not in any of the, there are 700 people who are with you right now, but you cannot see your colleagues because of GDPR purposes. The same way, you cannot see your colleagues' comments. Thank you, Manal. You cannot see your colleagues' comments that are coming in. So this is because of GDPR purpose, again, but then I read a lot of these comments as they come along, so you're able to interact and know what's happening. But sorry, we do see the comments, by the way, because some people feel like we cannot see the comments. So, but we do see all the comments that are coming in. So thank you so much for all of that. And lastly, I just want to cover that you have received the session link that you've joined in. This is the 1 p.m. session. However, every session has a different link. So we've already covered 3 sessions, and this one is for 1 p.m. We only have 1 session tomorrow, by the way, that's in the morning. I see some questions coming in for that. So there's 1 session that's 10 a.m. If you have to attend the session that's tomorrow for 10 a.m., you will have to register for the session. The same link is not going to work, I'm afraid, for the session that's tomorrow. So if you have registered already, you don't need to register again because you are taking up a seat for your colleague. So make sure that if you have already registered, please just use the link that's in your email. You would have received a reminder email as well. If you register on the same day, you might not receive the registration email. So just make sure you have registered in advance to just make sure you have there is no second session tomorrow, Wafa. We just have 1 session tomorrow. There is the morning session that's at 10 a.m. So there is no afternoon session. So don't worry if you don't have a link for that because there is no session in the afternoon. We are just doing a morning session, which is session number 5. This is going to be the last session for intermediate teacher level. You're very welcome, no problem. And I guess that sums up from me. It's just the same thing that there is a different link for everything. So I am going to drop off because some of you have requested that can I get the 3rd session link or handout, sorry, not link, handout for the 3rd session. Can I get the 1st session? So here are all the handouts for all the sessions that we have covered. This is session 4. I will drop it in the chat box so you can download the handouts for yourself. And I guess other than that, I will just hand over to Danai now. Thank you so much for your patience and listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, everyone, for coming back. Thank you to those who have decided to join. Since you were talking about handouts, one of the things that I would like to point out is the handouts that you have from the sessions are sort of like worksheets. So those of you who are interested, look at the questions, the tasks that you're supposed to think about. It's going to help you process the rest and maybe remember some of the things that we've discussed in session. Okay. So, right, where we're going to be talking about speaking and writing. As you might gather, there is overlap from the morning session because we're talking about spoken and written language. The difference being that here we're talking about productive skills, not receptive skills. But really, it's sometimes difficult to distinguish, rather to separate, to divide the two. particularly in a teaching situation. Okay, just a couple of points to consider about speaking. Speaking during the lesson. This is something that has been mentioned. The problem of teacher speaking time versus student speaking time during the lesson. And unless you would like to comment, what I'd like to say here again is, if you don't encourage students to help each other work, do collaborative learning, work in groups, teams, in pairs, at the same time during the lesson, then you can't optimize the time that's available. And because we tend to speak too much, we as teachers, as I've been doing in these sessions, there's very little time left for students to speak at all. Well, we create, if not equal, we can create opportunities for students, as I said, by handing over things to them. If you remember, when we looked at the three-stage approach, for example, for reading, and we talked about the first stage, which is very important, to activate all kinds of relevant knowledge that's relevant to the topic, even language that they might find in the text. They'll have to discuss that. They have to talk about it. So basically, speaking comes up all the time in the lesson, provided you don't take over and do all the speaking for them. And one more thing that was mentioned actually in a session the day before was the problem of echoing, among other things. We're going to go back to management and managing time tomorrow, but there are all kinds of things you can do to save a bit of time and make sure there is a little time for the students to speak. Okay, now speaking beyond the lesson, beyond the learning context, actually you preempted that. And there were comments about students who use or don't use the target language, the language that they're trying to learn, in other words, English in this case, outside the classroom, outside the learning, the formal learning context, be it in a classroom or online. There was a comment from somebody, and thank you so much for that, about the students who have been watching movies a lot, have been exposing themselves to spoken language, and have therefore developed fluency, so they can speak. Okay, does that happen a lot, or is that not so common? Hello? Anyone there? It happens a lot. Very good. Okay. Right. Some people say not so common. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So, a lot. Well, it's going to happen a lot more. Yes, happens sometimes. Okay. It's going to happen a lot more if you consider the fact that students, teenagers, are natives, younger students are natives to technology as well. It's part of their lives. It's not anything different. I mean, they haven't experienced what some of us who are older have experienced. Okay, so there is a mix. Some people are saying it happens a lot. Other people say it doesn't happen a lot. Inevitably, it's going to depend very much. It happened with gaming, absolutely. I think games are wonderful for the kids to develop language skills and also interact with other people. Do they write the chat? Yes. A student who is interested in gaming is likely to develop a lot more. They practice in class only. Okay, so we have a mix. Yes, because of gaming and YouTube. Yes, fine. Great. So there we go. So this is why it's quite important to make them aware of the process of what they're doing when they're watching and listening at the same time. So even that is sort of multitasking, yeah? Because they have to listen and also watch, and they multitask even more when they're actually in the game, playing the game, be it strategy or role play or whatever. Yes, I think they are wonderful things. Yes, video games and watching movies. Well, fine, wonderful. You're lucky. Yes, they use the language a lot better in gaming than they use it in the classroom. Why? Because it's a different kind of medium. Yes, animation. It's a different kind of medium. Like students who are not very happy to write sort of an essay or to complete something in class. Yes, it's more fun. Yes, so they are quite happy to chat. Yes, please do speak English during the lesson. Yes. Gaming is a real situation. Absolutely, I agree. Yes, and movies. Yes, because in the movies they can see the context. You see, this is why it's so much better. It's so much more effective. They can see the context. The picture represents the context, the situation, exactly, the real one that's happening at the same time. The gaming, the whole gaming business. They like gaming. I like gaming too. You learn a lot from it, okay? It's interactive. It's truly interactive. Nobody is telling them or trying to make it interactive. It is interactive. So my view is that it's not really, it's not a bad thing at all. Yes, it also is important for them to think while they're playing. So even games that don't seem to be that interesting when you look at them actually require a fair bit of thought, okay, for them to be able to move fast, decision making. There's a lot of decision making there. In the movies, yes, there is translation. You're referring to the subtitles. Do you mean the subtitles? Yes, strategy. Yes. Okay. Well, if there are subtitles, actually, what I discovered, because I used to train learners not to watch without subtitles, and just broke down a movie to bits. And like little installments and went through it that way. But I discovered later that actually when they go through the subtitles, a lot of them look at the subtitle and then go back and listen to the whole bit, to the whole chunk, and really pick up language. Sonic games, yeah, okay. So do they in general? Yes. They're interested. So this is all they need in order to participate. Yes, subtitles would distract them if you want them to learn how to listen and understand. I agree completely. But what I'm trying to say is that some students use them to acquire language. So they use them as an input. So it's interesting to see how they learn. And by the way, when speaking, do make some time to get students to talk about what they do, get them to reflect on what they do as they play and how they learn, what they learn and how they learn. You'll find out a lot, and it's going to help with the work that you do with them. So in general, would you say that your students prefer to speak or to write in English? The subtitle in fact, yes, good. Sorry, speak. Right. See. Yeah. Interesting. Quite a lot of speaking. Okay, they prefer to speak. Okay. Yes, well, there is a lot of speech around, isn't there? And a lot of the texts that people are exposed to on the web are highly organized, content-rich texts. So it makes sense, doesn't it? There was a comment a bit earlier, sorry about this, there was a comment a bit earlier about the subtitles being in the target language, being in English. Absolutely. Okay, that's another thing they do, students on their own, to pick up language from movies. Okay? Depends on the characters. Some like speaking and some like writing. Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, it's learning styles, it's different people, multiple intelligences, personality, experience, and so on. Are they aware of speech, of features of spoken language? Have they noticed? Speak to indulge in the language. No, they haven't noticed. Well, it doesn't matter. You can get them to notice things as you work through them if you want to. Are they more confident in understanding connected speech because of their exposure to language outside the classroom? Okay, some learners are aware, yes. Okay. Right, I can see that you've got it's mixed. Okay, which is very normal. Okay, they don't have the self-confidence to do so. Okay, you mean to speak or to write, to produce, in other words. Okay, may I also there remind you of the point about speak? But may I also remind you about correction, particularly in speaking. If they know you're going to interrupt and correct every mistake they make as they're speaking, that's not going to help them build up their confidence. It's certainly not going to help them participate. So when you want to do speaking, you have to decide on what your goals are. If your speaking has to do with a new language item, vocabulary, grammar item, a chunk, functions, then you want them to practice, then something about handouts, sorry. Then yes, okay, fine. Inevitably, earlier in your practice, you will correct and you will get them to repeat and get each other to correct, get the students to correct each other and so on. That's the one thing. Remember the top-down, bottom-up approach. What is first? Which one goes from language to meaning or from meaning to language? So if that's our purpose, if we have presented new language and we want them to practice it, then obviously correction happens earlier on and it is justified. Yes, practice does make perfect. However, if you want them to speak in class, to express an opinion, to have a discussion, to make comments, and your aim has to do mainly with fluency, activating language and using it in order to express, to convey a message, then you can't keep on interrupting and correcting them, because also when you do that all the time, they forget about what they were going to say, and sometimes they give up. Yes, good. Let the students continue. What I would suggest is that you make a note of the mistakes that you hear, of the problems that you identify, because it might not be a specific mistake, and you do delayed correction after the activity has finished. You could choose some of the items, write them on the board, and get everybody to suggest different versions. So that's delayed correction. If you want to focus on fluency, then basically it's the communication aspect of things that we want to reinforce. Then it's important that you make them feel more confident and let them know that you are not going to be correcting every mistake they make, as long as they can get their message through, as long as they can communicate successfully. So just to go through things, because I don't know who was here this morning and who joined this afternoon only. I just missed the last comment in the chat. You might have to pick that up later. Okay. If we allow them to feel free, they will not need time to think before they speak. It depends on what they have to say. Okay. Yes, it's true that when we speak, as we said, we have restricted processing time, so we need to do a number of things at the same time, and there isn't a lot of time to think. But when you're setting up an activity and you want them to think about things before they start discussing or commenting, then obviously you'll have to give them time to think. Yes, they speak through their projects and competitions. You meant paraphrasing. Okay, fine. So we're going into strategies. Okay. I put down achievement strategies, reduction strategies. Reduction strategies is when you avoid using items. Achievement strategies is when you replace things with other things that you know, like paraphrasing. Okay. They don't have to try and specifically remember certain vocabulary items. So it's good to train them to paraphrase. So they say, okay, what's the word for somebody who, works in a company, but is not the boss, is not the big boss, but is someone who is in charge or who is over sort of a number of people, because they can't remember the word supervisor, maybe. They can't remember the word manager, okay? So teach them how to do that. And one very practical activity, and it can be a lot of fun, is find something that they're interested in, where a certain chunk, number of words or word is repeated throughout. For example, this could be, for example, part of a manual, or how to play a game, which they're interested in. And find the thing that is used throughout, maybe about the setting of the game, just a little part of it, and get them to think about how they can convey that without using the word. Okay? And it's a speaking activity that you can do in different contexts, and it can be a lot of fun, and it really helps them develop paraphrasing, which is very, very useful, by the way. Okay, so you don't feel that students, they're not children, they're teenagers, need time to think before they speak. How can we deal with lack of basics, alphabet, vocabulary? I'm sorry, it's just we can't cover that in this session, along with everything else. We are very much focusing on developing these skills. Okay, yes, they do need time to think about what they're going to say. So if it's a project, and if it's making decisions about a project, they have to think. Okay, they have to think in order to brainstorm, organize their ideas. Yes, possibly brainstorm on some language that they can recall, they remember, that they think they might need. So you need to give them a bit of time. What really discourages students is when you go through everything as quickly as possible, and you only basically address the whole group, get one or two answers and carry on. If some of them want others to speak first because they're more confident, that's okay. But then give them the floor, ask them to speak as well, even if they are likely to repeat something that they've heard. It doesn't matter. Yes, a lot of what we do depends on what they are speaking about. In other words, it depends on the kind of activity that we've got. Speaking can be completely controlled, as we said before. You have a handout on that, actually, how to develop from very controlled to less controlled to totally open-ended activities when you're dealing with new language. However, you don't have to do this with familiar language. That's a different, it's a different approach completely. Okay, vocabulary in the interactive whiteboard has no pronunciation. Does it matter? Yes, role play is speaking. Okay, I want to make my students think in English, then speak, instead of thinking in Arabic, then speaking. Yes, because it's the second language, some are weak in thinking in English. Okay, can we deal with this? We don't only think in language. We can, when we think, what flashes through your mind could be different images, memories, parts of things, some language, okay? But if translation has been used throughout and the students are used to working through translation, what very often happens is when they want to say something in English, they formulate the whole thing in Arabic. In other words, they tell themselves, they think of the whole sentence or sentences in Arabic. Then they translate into English in order to speak. That slows them down. A student can be quite fluent even if they haven't got a huge vocabulary. This is exactly why I was talking about paraphrasing. This is not, yes, of course, somebody who has more vocabulary can be more articulate, can talk about more things, there's no doubt about it. But you can make sure that all of them can utilize any knowledge they have. Little teacher strategy, give them the chance to speak. Okay, it's interesting strategy for them. Yes. When you say little speaker type, little teacher strategy, I don't understand. Are you referring to flipped learning? You mean that's a start until they manage? Maybe we can discuss this later, because I'm not sure I understand the comment. That's a start until, well, if you're referring to translation, no, it's not a good idea. Okay, fine. You mean flipping roles, making the students role play, handing over to the students the role of the teacher. Yes, great. Okay. If you want to translate, if that's what you're interested in, and if you're a translator, yes, it's very interesting, and comparative linguistics is very interesting. I agree, but we're supposed to be teaching the language for the students to communicate. That's all I'm saying. So I'm not sure that anybody is saving time or doing anyone a favor through translation, because basically that means that if they're out somewhere later in the world, if they are, say, in a school, in a summer school, and they have to use English to communicate with their peers, with other people their age, then they need an interpreter. Do they need somebody to translate for them? This often happens, you see. I mean, this is why some parents, and quite a few parents actually, quite a few Saudi parents, if they can, they try to send their kids abroad to summer schools just so they have to use English in order to communicate with other kids that don't speak Arabic. Naturally, if there are other students who speak Arabic, forget about it. They're not going to make much of an effort, but they might make an effort with other kids, with other nationalities. And anyway, when that is the context, actually, the students do try to speak. Okay. Yes, words, if you're really having trouble explaining them in a different way, obviously, yes, you might have to translate, repeat the word, and then carry on. Okay. In writing, is grammatical accuracy, as you said yourselves, I think, at some point, is important in writing. Now, we're talking about something else. In writing, unless you're referring to the sort of language, the chat that goes on actually sometimes in games and in general on the web, that has developed into a particular genre. But I'm not referring to that specifically. But when you want students to learn how to write, little report, okay, to complete a form, to answer some questions. Okay, yes, good. I'm sorry, I'm not dealing with some of the comments which are very good about gestures and so on when people don't know the word in English. But we have sort of dealt with that in an earlier session, so there isn't that much time, and I'm trying to save a bit of time to carry on with productive skills. I am sorry. Formal writing, yes. If it's formal writing, then obviously you need to look at conventions, you need to look at style, you need to look at grammatical accuracy and lexical accuracy. Okay, and not going to waste too much time on this, but what I'm going to say is you have been talking about grammar and you have been talking about correction and correct English and basically accuracy, which can be grammatical or lexical accuracy or all kinds of other types of accuracy, because if you think, yes, translation may weaken learners' chances to speak, absolutely. Now, when you talk about accuracy, then you talk about accuracy in writing. It's important to be correct when you write, not when you communicate through written language, depending, again, on what you write, but it's important. Not so important when you want to get a message across in most sort of common situations through speech, and you have to communicate. Some mistakes can be overlooked if the message gets through. Okay, we always need to focus, yes, cohesion, coherence, yes. We all need to focus on the context. And the most important thing in writing, which is often absent when we set up writing activities, is the addressee. We tell students, for example, to write an article for a school site about a project. Okay, where is that article going to appear? Is there a section for parents? Are parents going to read it? Are they going to be the addressees? Or is it an article that's going to be addressing other students and get them sort of interested in a greater effort to do something? It is important because we need to feel that we're addressing somebody, not only when we speak, but when we write as well. And that is very important in effective communication. Genre is text type, yeah? Very simply. text type, okay, and the different sort of features that go with it. What kind of features do you have to observe when you write a formal letter, for example, as opposed to an informal, personal note or email? Okay? Dictation. Okay, dictation is a very traditional practice. You can do it if you want because it's also listening. But it doesn't deal with conveying anything again. It has to do with listening and recording. So it's receptive, it's not productive. Okay? Okay. Another thing, yes, this is why dictation is mentioned here. Expressing facts, expressing feelings, okay? This is what you call controlled writing that deals with accuracy, yeah? They stop handwriting. Yes, that is a recent trend, but it's very easy to explain, isn't it? Because everybody's going around with a device. Why should they handwrite? And and particularly in cultures like the Arabic culture where you have wonderful calligraphy and all that, I know it kind of hurts sometimes, or it hurts people who really like that aspect of things. But unfortunately, this seems to be the way. What they're doing instead of developing sort of handwriting, you can have any opinion you like. She's the extra. She can't even complete the sentence because of the comments. Yes, thank you. Okay, I'll disregard some comments so we can carry on. Okay. Got it. I got the message. Okay. So, handwriting is a big issue. You need to be critical to write an essay. Yes, okay. Let's look at something. Can you have a look at your handout for session 2, which is says writing handout, and look at the second page. At the bottom, number 6, it says, look at this essay title. In what ways is it inadequate? What kind of information is missing? What kind of information would your class need in order to write this? Describe a person you admire. Do you think that's a good title? Describe a person you admire. What do you describe? Do you describe the personality? Okay. If you say to students, you might not be able, I understand you're not finding that. Don't look at the slides, look at the handout. Page 2 of the writing handout. Number 6. Describe a person. Yes, it's very general and ambiguous. Thank you. Okay. So, describe a person you admire. What kind of person? Is a person you know well? Is it somebody who is famous? You have to specify this. Is it somebody who is a figure nationally, internationally? Is it a professional? Is it an artist? Is it somebody that you know well? Could it be somebody who is a friend of the family, a friend, a relative? You have to really break it down. Describe someone you know well. Describe someone you know well and admire. Okay, that's a little better. you have to give them more. Like, describe a person that you know well and admire. Explain. Okay. Describe his personality. Explain why you admire the person. Is it because of things he or she has done, facts? Is it because of behavior, the way they behave? Is it because of something that happened? Provide example, okay? You can use an incident, describe an incident. So you need to give them a complete framework to help them write. One of the reasons that students quite often hate writing essays, and which I'm sure you know, is because they can't think of what to say. Really, it is often very little to do with the language, but more to do with the content. Yes, you need to be a lot more specific. Give them a framework so they know what to do. And if you give them a framework, you can also tell them, okay, you have to do it in 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph has to give a general sort of description of the person, including personality and maybe appearance if it's relevant, and so on and so forth. The second one, whatever, and so on and so forth. Yes, okay. So, and this is how we train them to write. It's not a matter of, here's a title, go off and write, and make sure you don't make any mistakes. No. If you carry on with your handouts and you go to the writing process on page 4, yeah, I hope you can find it. What does she look like? Yes, you can give them a whole number of questions to guide them if they want. If it's earlier, if it's first year and so on, you can use questions for guided writing, okay? But later, you can give them a context and you can give them the topics or the focus of different parts of the essay, of the paragraphs. Tell them how much to write, not only as a number of words, but also give them an idea of how to organize it, what to write first. So brainstorming absolutely helps. This is why it's important for us to let students work in pairs or groups. I know we can brainstorm individually, but it's not the same thing, is it? If you can find the writing process on your handouts on page 4, it kind of very generally sets out some of the stages. First of all, you have to identify the audience, the purpose of the text. Who is going to read the text? So in this case, for example, describing the person you admire. Who is going to read that? Are you writing it because there's going to be a competition in class? Are the essays going to be posted online for everyone to see and choose the one they like best? Exactly what is going to happen? Or is it because they're going to read the text, I mean the whole class, and choose the one that is so strong that they think, yes, okay, this person is worth admiring? It's up to you to set the purpose. Decide on style, layout, format. Yes, of course, not underlining words. Oh, you mean to change them about themselves? We do that at more controlled stages. Yes, absolutely. Okay, decide on style, layout, format. Okay? As I said before, you're going to write in 3 paragraphs. First one is going to be about a more general kind of statement about what you're going to be going into in the rest of the text, and so on and so forth. The second one is going to describe the person as the person's personality and so on. I'm just using that as an example. Ideas. Again, quite often students don't want to write. Some immensely dislike writing. Others love it. I have no problem with that. But because they don't know what to write. So yes, as you suggested, brainstorming. Give this, you have to incorporate in your stages, in the stages of the lesson. How do you gather ideas? Do you gather ideas from other reading? Do you have to read similar text? Okay, yes, possibly. This is a model text idea. Do you gather ideas from our own experience and knowledge, or the experience and knowledge of others? Is everything useful? Do you have to maybe select relevant ideas? And then you need time to plan and organize, okay? Now, this planning stage is the stage that seems to disappear quite often in writing and causes a lot of problems. You need to think about what you're going to write, what you're going to write about. Make notes, okay? Yes, you can make a semantic, you can do semantic mapping. You can have a mind map. All that is wonderful, but you need the time to plan. Because in most cases, unfortunately, when students are asked to write, they think, oh, boring, and they just hit the paper and start writing, or hit the keyboard and start writing. And it's just sentences, and some of them might even be supposedly grammatically correct, and there are many buts and ands and howevers in various levels, but the essay doesn't say anything. Just because there is correct structure doesn't mean that that essay is acceptable if it doesn't say anything, if it doesn't communicate anything. Then you write a first draft. The first one that you write is a draft. You review the first draft. You can self-review, but it's better if you exchange with another student. Review the first draft, correct spelling, punctuation, grammar, improve use of appropriate vocabulary, make changes to organization, check information that's missing or unnecessary for the reader. This is not what you do. This is what other students do as readers. They operate as editors, okay? Even with very simple writing. Then the text goes back to the original writer and they redraft the text. Then you send the text to the readers. So then you post the text on the board. I'm not talking about the slide. I'm talking about what you can see in your handouts on writing. It's HO2 session 2 writing page 4. Okay, so
I think they're a bit we're getting messages, that's why. Okay, yeah, I can see the writing bit. They were just saying they could see Super Goal 1, but actually Danai is referring to the handout that's in the link. Does that make sense?
Sorry about this.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to answer the questions that are they're sending privately as well.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right. So we talked about a 3-stage approach in receptive skills, in listening and reading, and basically there are many stages in writing, but in general, if you want to look at it at stages, you need a stage, okay, to set up the writing activity, to set up the context of the writing activity. You need a stage to gather ideas, information, language, and so on. That's second. You need a stage to write a first draft. Third. You need a stage to review the draft, someone else to read, and maybe spot things that are not easy to understand or any mistakes they can spot. A stage to rewrite the draft and then post it. This is what I'm trying to say. Okay, now, in terms of writing, I just chose something that some of you have seen before. I chose as a unit from Supergoal 1 on museum, and basically showing you the writing page. Okay, and it's about what is a museum you know, what are your favorite objects in the museum, write notes in the chart, describe the age, size, or where the objects are from. You can use words like old, new, modern, big, small, and so on. And there is a chart there for students to make notes in. Whoops. Okay, let me now go to your teaching guide, okay? Suggestions. You will probably have better ideas, maybe. Ask students about a museum they know and some of the objects they can see them. If you have visited a museum as a class, discuss the objects and ask students to describe the ones they like best. Provide models. For example, I like the modern paintings at the National Gallery. They're beautiful. Go over the directions with the class. Tell students they will use their notes to write about a museum they have visited, and so on. Please look at the notes in the teacher's book, because basically they will give you the absolute stages that are needed, but you can extend them if you like, okay? Not in terms of time, in what is actually produced there. The writing corner is going to give you a point to focus on, which could be linguistic, could be language, the type of language you need. It could be something to do with the type of text that people need to write, and so on. I'm going back to the student page. So here's the writing corner. Okay, the writing corner, they have to rely on examples very much, and you might have to explain this to them. I wouldn't waste the time if I didn't have it. I would just ask them to look at the examples. You can't zoom in writing section in interactive whiteboard. You mean like this? I'm zooming in. Okay, is it necessary to zoom in? I don't know. I can't figure out exactly what you're referring to, just the whole page. Okay, you can still crop and use parts of it. Okay, that is on the same page. There's a little text which requires reading. What objects are in the museum? What words describe the objects? Okay, and these are the guide's instructions. Okay, this was something that they saw part of on the very first page of the unit. So they have to read this. They highlight words that describe objects, and then they have to take on the role of the museum guide and write about favorite objects, their favorite objects in the museum. Okay, so what I'm trying to show you is that actually your books follow this. When it comes to the project, you will have to make the stages available to the students, but look at your teacher's guide, because that will give you stages, will give you ideas. And this is where you can flip very comfortably and send students off to gather material, to get information, and so on. Okay. I hope that's all making sense. So this is what I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you that you're not basically isolated. You're not on your own. Please do look at these things because it's there. I mean, the material is there for you to use. It's there for you to adapt if you like. But if you insist on talking about it and teaching about the language rather than teaching the language and translating everything, it's not going to work. Okay. I also wanted to make you aware of the fact that in terms of speaking, and speaking which is quite open-ended, there are all sorts of instances in your material. So effectively, your material has a very strong skills focus. Everything is done through listening, speaking, reading, writing, okay? Noticing. We want them to notice things. This is why we ask them to read, and in the previous task that I showed you, to read and highlight the words that describe the object, okay? Instead of saying, da, 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 these are the words that describe the object. If I start asking you questions, those of you who were in the previous session, will you feel about what we talked about in the previous session? Will you remember everything we talked about? Please, an answer? No. Of course not. Of course not. Some, yes. Maybe some things that you can relate to, some things that you're interested in, some things that you object to, some things that you accept. Hints, ideas. Yes, exactly. Okay, you remember the important points. Maybe 90%. Wow, that's fantastic. Okay, but what I'm trying to say is you can't expect students to learn through telling. You need to get them to do things in order to learn, so they can learn to learn. They can learn to notice things. They can learn to notice features. They can learn, yes, model, but it's a take the model and help them highlight what is important. Easy information will go easier, absolutely. It will be forgotten. I speak 70% in class, and students about how could I make them speak more? By not wasting time explaining things about language. Let them work through it. Whatever it is, it might be just developing their understanding when they listen to something. It might be acquiring words. It might be anything at all. It's important to involve them if we want to get them interested and working through. This is another example of the kind of speaking that you've got. Ask and answer about yourself. Okay? What are the names? Fine. But how about, okay, doing it first as a model. As it says in your teacher's room, put students in pairs to practice the pair work. So get them to do an interview. Get them to make notes about each other and report. Okay? It's all there. You need to manage it accordingly. So, are controlled activities such as repetition, completion, etc., speaking activities? Please tell me. No answer? Oh, please. Don't all leave. Yes, thank you. Again. Okay. They are speaking activities, because when they know less, when they're at the beginning, when they're a lower level, when they have less language, okay? We need to guide. Should we try to progress from more to less controlled activities, or the other way around? Sometimes yes. Does that mean sometimes no? We could discuss that in another webinar because it is possible, but usually with different age groups and different types of learners. What might happen if there has not been enough preparation or practice, before, oops, I'm messing this up, before you ask the students to personalize and do a more open-ended activity? Yes, probably nothing, or you're going to get the same one or two people speaking all the time. It's going to be a waste of time, and then in the next time we meet, you're going to say it doesn't work. Okay, so integrating skills, which is exactly what your coursebook does. Please notice that skills are usually integrated throughout the lessons in each unit. So they need to speak in order to practice something. They need to speak in order to find information. They need to speak in order to learn expressions. So it's sometimes content, sometimes it's the content, the information, the message that's being conveyed. So we focus on meaning only. Sometimes we focus on, we use, for example, speaking, listening. We use it, like in dialogues, for the students to listen to and learn to use particular forms or learn to use particular functions. Yes, you make your lessons meaningful. Learners are expected to practice new language through speaking. Mostly yes in the beginning. Things get a little more demanding later on, maybe in secondary. Encourage learners to use audio at home, watch videos, etc., to increase their exposure to the language in context. I shouldn't have even mentioned that because you're all happy to do that, as far as I can tell from your comments. Yes, they have to learn, not to be learned. Yes, not to be taught. Well, you do a little bit of that as well, I suppose. But yes, anything that you think your learners can do instead of you is an opportunity that you shouldn't deprive them of. And this is how they learn, and this is how they learn faster. Absolutely, I agree with the games. I can't just say enough. Identify examples that provide opportunities for skills integration in your course book. Just be careful and see how much speaking there is in between the language focus, learning to acquire language. So to wrap up, we use spoken language, we use listening to present language. It could be grammar, it could be vocabulary, it could be both, okay? But we also use it for understanding. Usually what we do, like with presentation exchanges, dialogues, is build up the context, as you said, through the picture. Yes, and build up the context through the picture, sorry. Give them a listening point that has to do with the meaning the first time they listen. Then get them to listen. Then look in the books, listen again, repeat, do any practice that you want to do, and so on and so forth. Yes, people are getting hungry, I think. And I think you've been absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much for this session. And this is it, Stone. I'll stop here so that those of you who are really hungry and sleepy can go off. No, I'm sorry if I've kept you longer. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tanai. That was a wonderful session. Thank you so much for your time, your energy. I can see there was a lot of engagement from the participants, so thank you so much. It's true, I'm really hungry.
Thank you. Thank you for this session. Thank you, all participants. Thank you for this session. I miss you. I wish I were closer. This is really hard.
Yes, and I saw one of the wonderful comments that says,
"You're starving. Go eat." Okay.
One of the wonderful comments that came in was like, I wish these sessions never end.
Oh, God, now I can retire. Really, what else? I mean, what else could I ever want? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wonderful session. Thanks a lot. You are amazing. Thank you so much, Danai. Really, it's so nice to see all your hard work come in place. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for all the participants. You guys have been amazing. So much interaction and have kept on really well and engagement. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience as well. Those of you who need to leave can leave. We will just cover a few question answers because we don't want to keep you up really late. But I will just go ahead and start asking Danai a few questions that have come in.
I can't believe these comments. Thank you. Thank you. I have a reason. I know why I miss Saudi and working with Saudi teachers. I miss you all, and I hope you have a good time, and I hope you're all safe and well and do wonderfully well.
Thank you, Danai. There's another comment for you. Thank you for your time. I'm telling you that you made a huge effect on me. Never forget you. You can't see this one because it's coming to me only. It's a private sent message. That's why I'm reading out for you.
Okay.
But lovely comments. Thank you for your kindness, Ms. Danai. Okay, sorry, I got very distracted there with all the lovely comments and getting very flattered, although they were for Danai, but I will take some part of credit for that. Moving to the questions. Okay, so number one is, in Supergoal, how can I deal with the unit of expansion? How many periods does it take?
It depends on how your students respond to the content of the expansion unit. It also depends on how much they've learned throughout the other units, because it also obviously recycles and expands. Okay, but what I would say is that if you're short of time and you have to maybe cut something short or reduce or go over, then that's the point to do it, unfortunately, although there's very nice material in those units. I also wanted to say, because the comments were made in the last session about the reading, and you mentioned that the students often sort of look up the questions and answers, the questions that are in the teacher's guide. They look at the answers on the web, and then they know everything, and then they don't bother to even understand anything. I would look at the expansion unit and try and replace maybe some text, if there's anything that you can use there to replace a text in an earlier unit. As I said, you will need to try and reorder some things without destroying the progression of the unit. I don't know what else to say, because I mean, I personally like those units very much, but you can only do what you have to do given the time you have. So you will probably have to go through some things quickly, and assign things for the students to do outside of class and perform in class or present in class if you need to save time.
Something has just come up. What is the best way to teach pronunciation?
Listen, and point out different features. Like Jim, if you were in the morning session, you remember what we did with the listening, where the answers had to do with the stressed words. Stress is an important aspect of spoken communication. So you can point out that they have to listen and identify the stressed words. Okay, for example, they have to listen and identify contraction, okay, and then repeat them. If you want them to be aware of what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. And how do you manage teachers speaking and student speaking time?
That is a very big question. It really involves the whole of methodology, but basically it has to do with learner-centered work and learner-centered management when you're in class, as much of that as possible when you're online, depending on the functions you have. In other words, the way we optimize time for the students is through pair work, group work. What's the best way to deal with students who don't know the basic English? Different levels of learning. Okay, different levels of learning, mixed abilities or basic or not. Again, we try to deal with in an inclusive manner through pair work and group work. Because if all the work you're doing in class is the traditional teacher-student mode, and you ask a question and so on, and everything is dealt with as if it was a test, then you can't really have inclusive lessons for people who are more or less confident and so on. What will probably happen is the ones that monopolize the lesson, the ones that feel confident, will carry on and will develop further and will be proud of themselves, and the ones that don't feel so confident and are quiet and more reluctant will really get even less confident. More of that tomorrow.
And the other one is, do you think that students have to understand the book and the goal of designing that curriculum before starting the lesson? I'd like to listen to your comments.
No. That's for you to understand. You can give them the rationale of the book as far as it concerns them. In other words, that this is done through activities where they have to listen to people speaking, and it's the language that's used is realistic. It's the language that they can use outside of the lesson when they actually communicate with people, that they learn to communicate, that it helps them develop skills. Whatever concerns them is important. But apart from that, no. But what you can do is share the goals, the aim of the lesson with them, and even, if you like, share the aim of each task, of each activity with them, from your point of view, because that also depends on the way you manage it.
Thank you.
As far as I can go with that one.
No, I think that's explanatory. How do we deal with lack of basics, alphabets, vocab?
I don't know to what extent you mean basics. Are you talking about people who haven't learned to read or write in English? Do you have sort of that kind of problem?
It doesn't say. This is all that it says.
Okay, there are language development courses, yes, for English teachers. They don't know the alphabet. You mean they don't know how to recite the alphabet, or they don't know how to read and write? I can't follow this.
Sorry. I'll read out the other one that says, what about punctuation? Is it very essential?
If you want them to write and make sense when they write, and if you also want them to learn to read faster and read for meaning and read silently, yes. Yes, you have students who don't know how to read or write in English. Some students have no knowledge of English. Well, that would require supplementary work, quite honestly, to give them some backing and then mix them in with the rest of the class to help them to get on. I mean, we can deal with mixed abilities, but you see, what I'm thinking of is something that you have all been saying this week about, you know, how stressful it is for you because you always have to go back and think about tests and things like that. So if that's what you're thinking of, extra classes if you can, yeah, basically. They don't memorize the alphabet. They all complain about that. Who complains? You mean the parents? They don't have to memorize the alphabet.
Okay, last one from me tonight is grammar is too long in one unit, about 3 or 4 parts in the lesson. Why?
Which unit?
Grammar is too long. It has 3 or 4 parts in one lesson.
But it's not too long. That's how you work through grammar. I repeat, you present through a grammar in context through the listen and discuss material. You do the quick check, you start practicing there, and then you isolate the language that you want to deal with as grammar, which is in the chart, sort of as a summary. That's a grammar summary. And you have the activities that are meant to give opportunities for practice.
Okay. Thank you so much for your amazing questions, everyone, and for being such a fantastic audience. I'm afraid we'll now have to round up for today because, and I know we didn't cover all of the questions, but
can I just cover this one?
Sorry, go ahead.
The work but as a revision at the end of the semester is making sense. Yes, why not? But it's also there for you to use as you're teaching. Okay, so you might want to choose things that you want to leave for the end from each section, possibly. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for being such a fantastic audience. And then we'll let you go now and see you tomorrow. We have just one session tomorrow in the morning at 10 a.m. We hate to say that when the event is full, so just make sure you join beforehand. We already have 1,000 participants that have registered for this webinar, and we can only have 1,000 in a webinar. I'm afraid maybe the registration link might not work now because we have had a lot of people who have registered for tomorrow. But thank you so much. Just use the registration link that confirmation link that's in your email to log into the webinar tomorrow. We don't have an afternoon session. Unless there's any other question for me, we can say goodbye today, and we'll see you tomorrow then. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.